Call the meeting to order. Ms. Gurdon, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Stone?
Here.
Dino M. Palakis?
Here.
Mr. Mayara?
Here.
Ms. Ramsey?
Here.
Ms. Register? Dino P. Pascalakis?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Chairman Lee?
Here. All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes from September 10th?
So moved.
A motion is second. All in favor of approving the minutes from September 10th as written, respond by saying aye.
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 All opposed, respond by saying nay. Motion carries. That takes us to agenda item number 4, 516 Main Street rezoning, DEV 2014-144. Is there a presentation of this?
Just a short one that I'm going to provide, and we do have a representative for the applicant, Mr. Matz, and he is here. Mr. Matz is out of town and could not be here, so representing him is going to be Mr. Paul Weaver with Historic Property Associates, and so as soon as I'm done, if you have any questions of me or Mr. Weaver, he's certainly welcome to get up and make any comments. In particular, his primary role has been to write the report you've seen and to deal with the content of the historic preservation side of this.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to first of all just draw your attention to the location of this property, and if you would please bring up that map so everyone can see that. And it's a very, very small parcel we're talking about, very small building. It's under a couple thousand square feet in footprint, and so it's not a big part of the Main Street area. I'm sure you all know it, particularly by the motorcycle murals can be there. The intent is to leave it there on the side. I don't know what it has of historic value on it, but it certainly has a lot of value for some of the people who have been around Main Street for a long time. And that's why it's been left intact there. This is just a couple more views of the building. I'm assuming everyone had a chance maybe to go by there. It's now posted with a sign for some of the public hearings that are going to come up that follow this board's action tonight. Number one, the Historic Preservation Board will meet next week on Tuesday the 18th. They'll review it. Then it'll go to the Planning Board. That will be another public hearing, and that will happen in December, and then in February the City Commission will have a public hearing at second reading, and then we'll be completed. But it's a lengthy process. There are a lot of bites at the apple here if anybody has any concerns about it. This board has historically had some concerns, and this is a section out of the master plan for the E-zone. And one of the first things we did as we got into this review was we employed Mr. Weaver, who's sitting here tonight, for looking at the Surfside district and particularly as it relates to the E-zone and any historic building. I mean, we just said, look, I don't know if it's in a national district or whatever, but look at the E-zone boundaries and what's in there, and guide us on what is left here, what's architecturally significant, what's historically significant, because Mr. Weaver's company was involved years before in helping us create the national districts. So he's had a lot of experience here. He comes from St. Augustine, and not too far away, although it seemed like it was probably further away tonight trying to drive down here in what is a bit of a tropical storm. We're glad you made it. I would say that one of the things that we did learn through this whole process is that the building that you're looking at tonight does have both historic and architectural significance, and Mr. Weaver can certainly give you more detail about it. And if you've read that report that he prepared, that outlines the technical requirements of what you have to answer to get a rezoning of this property for historic overlay. It's still in the RDB2 zoning district, but it would have an H next to it in its classification. So if you looked at a zoning map, there'd be this H at the end of it. And it would just tell you that there is a local historic site designated. And it'll actually be something that anybody who's looking at a map could see that. And the effect of that is that now under the designation for a local historic district, you would have the Historic Preservation Board in a position of looking at any of the changes that might be requested, just as if you were in a local district. And some of you may have been here when we went through a process of review of an attempt to create the Seabreeze Historic District that was going to be a local designation and would have incorporated a lot of the area to the north side of the Main Street redevelopment area. And the board at that time, Main Street Board, did not have a good reaction to the idea of local designation and local control or influence by another board, one that they had the regulatory powers to tell a property owner what they can or can't do, and particularly with compatibility. And the concern was on as those things change, that would be a real concern. That may have changed, but I just want to give you some recent historical context to what we were dealing with before. The result of that concern and recommendations that went forward to the City Commission ended up requiring that anything that was outside of Main Street got approved in the Seabreeze District, the final boundaries. But the areas that were south of Oak Ridge, in the Main Street redevelopment area, that area remained a national district only and not a local district. The national district does not have those requirements that are imposed by the local ordinance, so there's a difference once you cross Oak Ridge into that district. So just want to give you that background in terms of where the lines were drawn previously. The concern has been that perhaps if we were to rezone one property, that might be a concern. We're going down that slippery slope of, what's going to happen next. Because there's been efforts, as you know, with the Surfside Historic District to create a local district here, and Mr. Weaver has been involved with the Historic Preservation Board on that. I think I've updated you on some of those efforts. At this time, there is no local district for Surfside. I think that has pretty well stopped. But I can tell you that most of Main Street is in that Surfside National District, including this building. And when we did the E-zone study and the master plan, we ended up saying this is going to be architecturally significant buildings only that we're going to recognize here. We're not going to recognize that the Surfside District has any additional meaning other than for those particular buildings. So the Bank of Blues and where Froggy's is, and some of the other key historic buildings were outlined. And in that map that I had up there, that shows in red some of those buildings. 516 Main Street is one of them. So what we're suggesting is we should be sensitive to any of those architectural buildings. We didn't put any regulations in place. There's nothing that speaks of it in a regulatory way in terms of the E-zone. We have nothing else to go by other than the common sense that there is some good that comes from trying to preserve some of our buildings that are part of our legacy, something that's historic, and that we should keep some of those landmarks in that area. And that, in my opinion, this is one building that if it remains for a very long time, it's to the benefit of the E-zone, not to the detriment. Because any building, let's say in the future, that builds next to it, and you can build 2-story buildings in this area on the block, according to the E-zone, and that's our vision, then you would build something next to it. It does. No one can tell you what it has to look like compatible, other than those who are going to do the review of a new building. Whether it's this board or whether it's administrative, it's going to be something that hopefully people will look at how buildings fit together, how they're going to look good on the street, how they're going to function. But that's the extent of the review. And then we have design standards that we apply. And you were involved in this building as well during the design standards this summer. There was a request on this building to take the storefront building, and I don't know if we got the pictures up here. Right here. There's the end result is you have the 3 windows that might look like it's one storefront building solid, but it's actually those are sliding. And what's different is it doesn't come all the way down to the sidewalk. So we had a compromise. We think it worked out, and from the street you get the sense that it's still a storefront building, and so everyone seemed to be happy with that, and again, no requirement that somebody had to have in there, but we do have design standards. We do try to look at the National Historic District and the design standards that are included in the national standards, but at the end of the day, you know, we try to be very flexible as staff about how to get something done on the street. And if we have a problem, right now we have a provision in here where we can come to you and settle some of these disputes. Hopefully not too often, but it does happen. So I've talked a lot. My apologies, but I think that as far as staff's concerned, this was the kind of a building we want to see actually preserved, and we should go forward with a positive recommendation.
Go ahead.
Paul Weaver, 5 Milton Street, St. Augustine. I know Ms. Doan from many years ago worked on when she owned the Main Street Pier, but our company, I think Mr. Berger mentioned a little bit, we've been working in Daytona Beach for about 30 years, going back to the Beach Street Survey, Surfside, Seabreeze, and we've done, I think, just about all the National Register nominations that have been done in the city of Daytona Beach. And he also mentioned we did the E-zone survey. I want to maybe just amplify a little bit some of the things that Reed said. In I think it was 1994, the Surfside Historic District was listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago we did the E-zone study. And one of the things we found is, I guess not surprising to many of you, there had been some pretty dramatic changes along Main Street. And where once you had more of a complete area that was probably eligible for the National Register, maybe even a local district, there'd been so much demolition and alteration. What's left now are really a few buildings like 514, 516 Main Street that are standalone. This particular building, I'm sure you've all had a chance to read the report, is, I think, a landmark building, and it's called out in the National Register nomination. It's been recognized in the Florida Master Site File, and in reviewing the criteria, I think it really met more than the minimum number. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have. It is an owner-initiated application, which is, I think, fairly unusual. And Mr. Matz has decided to move forward with this. So with that, if anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
May I ask, is the owner's incentive for wanting this kind of zoning, historic zoning?
Well, typically there are two things that come along with this type of designation. One would be some local protection, and the other are financial incentives. Mr. Berger, you can probably tell more, speak more authoritatively about what is available locally, if anything. We did the Donnelly House, I think, many years ago as a local landmark, and that was so it could get a special zoning for a bed and breakfast. But it is still in this National Register district, and there are some financial incentives, particularly federal tax credits.
Okay.
So I've been talking with Mr. Matz about trying to pursue that, and we're going to maybe get a preliminary opinion about that. So local protections, it does have some protections based on the fact that it is in the National Register district, and then there are the financial incentives.
So local protection against someone telling him what he could do with his building or couldn't do with his building as far as the city zoning?
What he is doing, he's applying for local landmark designation, and my understanding, if he does substantial work that would require a building permit, he would have to go before the Historic Preservation Commission for a certificate of appropriateness to do that work. So he's doing it voluntarily, so they're going to have their design standards, and I know I talked with Mr. Berger a little bit, and I think some issues came before you, but in the future, if there's substantial work, he would have to get a certificate of appropriateness for the work prior to it being undertaken.
So what's he being protected from then? I don't quite understand.
Well, I think it's protection of the property itself from changes that might destroy its architectural character. For example, I don't know, you have the picture. There's some significant detailings. The main thing was that the mansard roof that's on there is very unusual. So if somebody in the future wanted to remove that, that would probably be an issue before the Historic Architectural Review Board. But again, it's his choice to do that. So
Yeah.
he's bringing himself into that. It's protection, but protection of the historic building.
In the years past, when the city used to abuse eminent domain, this would be a way to protect your property.
That's okay. That's what I was asking. Okay, got it.
Had to put it in that one-liner.
He's looking at you.
Well, I mean, it is an owner. I think he's trying to assert his property rights. So, you know, he's doing it voluntarily. So,
Well, I'd just like to make a comment, if I could, please. Can I do that now? No. I helped the previous owners paint the exterior on the building. And even though I did not approve the final field color, the gold, it was supposed to be a much softer color, I went to the owner that owned the building directly on the west side that butts up to it, that shares the same mansard roof. Because those two buildings, the one that's the rusty Harley Davidson colors, you see the reddish rust on the
Right.
building? Okay, that's owned by a separate owner. So I can't remember his name. Reed, what's his name that owns that building next door? He did a terrific job on this
TJ.
building. Who is it?
TJ.
TJ. Okay.
TJ Fred.
TJ what?
Fred.
Well, I'll tell you what, the inside of that building, he had one of the top interior designers in the area do the inside. It's just marvelous. So I went to him and I said, look, this was built at the turn of the century. It's a Victorian with a French mansard roof. And I said it was built as one building originally. And I said I really appreciate architecture, so I said, history of architecture. So I said, it would be great if we're going to take some of your red colors and we're going to put them on our gold building. He got so enthused about doing it. And then I said, the main thing we have a problem with, I said, is this shared mansard roof. I said, your building must be painted the same colors on your mansard as is on ours. Otherwise, it will never read as a single building again. He got so enthused. I know he spent at least $400 or $500. He took some of the gold color from the corner building and put it onto his building. So, I would have loved it if both the buildings could have been the same color, but we got real close with that. So, I can really appreciate designating this. And I think that most people are probably for certain buildings being designated, like Bank of Blues and that sort of thing. Is that, am I reading that right? I mean, is that?
I probably won't be filing for it now.
So you don't like it because it has a control on it?
Yes.
I'm just trying to understand what the
I like to change
incentives are.
paint colors. I like to change.
Okay, so, all right. So really, this is like difficult because, what did you say, many bites out of this thing or something like that? In other words, people are very divided on this issue. Is that what the case is?
I think there's division sometimes. I think maybe we could go back and say that the question is, do we need to have more regulation? That was a kind of the bottom line, is how much regulation do we really need in another layer here? And historic is going to be another layer.
Okay.
But again, the applicant is looking forward to that. So,
Okay.
and as far as we're concerned right now, I think the E-zone plan certainly doesn't indicate that we should do anything other than encourage protection or saving some of these historic buildings.
So the
This being one.
city is behind this. Then.
No, not the city. Well, the city is behind approving the E-zone master plan. Everyone will interpret this differently.
Okay.
Okay? So my professional opinion in reading that plan is that this is is what the plan is saying, is that this really does, because of the map and the study that's already been done previously, that those are some of the buildings that are along there that we would like to see saved. We're not saying that means you have to rezone it to save it.
Right.
It just means if Bank and Blues is going to do something out there and it wants to be yellow and red stripes, we'll be probably having a conversation about that. But other than that, it's really a philosophical thing whether people want more regulation.
But the Bank and Blues, although it was on the map as a potential, it's not designated, right? It doesn't have the H.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
No.
Nothing does on Main Street.
No.
At this time.
In fact, it's been very unusual when there have been any designations of historic. You just saw the Streamline went through the process. They are designated already. They've gone through the local designation, but it was quite some time ago. So it's been very rare that somebody has come forward and wanted to rezone. But there's another case pending right now before the board next week, Historic Preservation Board, where they're asking the same thing. They want to fix up a house that's over in the downtown redevelopment area, and are asking to actually have those regulations imposed on them. One of the things that's unique about it, if you're preserving a building and it's pretty much intact on the exterior the way you want it, there's no big deal. If down the road you want to change things or a new owner comes in, now you've got these restrictions because the designation just doesn't change when a new owner shows up. So it's protected in the community for as long as there's zoning.
But when a property owner wants to change things, doesn't the historical board look towards changing it to the original back in 1930 type of appearance, or do they allow you to keep it in the current condition?
Well, you can You can,
But I was told that the historical board would, if you wanted to do something, it would try to move you back to what it looked like historically.
no, not necessarily, and I think, Mr. Weaver, you might want to speak to
Yeah,
that
I did the
in
state
general
model
terms.
guidelines, a project with the Florida Department of State, and typically, and I think the city of Daytona Beach's guidelines, although you don't have anything really designated yet to regulate, but it's rehabilitation, it's not restoration. In other words, it's what the building, like this building is today. There's no requirement that it be restored to what it appeared like when it was originally there. Matter of fact, one of the emphasis of the program is adaptive use. In other words, a lot of these buildings are functionally obsolete. I worked with Paul and Susie Holmes on the South Ridgewood Elementary School. Of course, it was obsolete as a school, and they converted it into offices and did a wonderful job, I think. And so it's that type of thing. It's not it's not a case of you're going to have to, you would be required. I think what the city has done has really left it at this point to the initiative of individual owners that have qualified buildings, and I think that's the case here. There's a gentleman who wants to move forward with this. He approached me and asked for me to research it and give him an opinion. And this was and not only I guess the original Surfside Survey, the National Register nomination, our E-Zone study. We all came to the same conclusion, and this was an individually significant building, both architecturally and historically. So that's kind of where we're at. But I don't think the rehabilitation, the guidelines are more oriented towards rehabilitation, not restoration. To answer your question,
Does it do anything for the building that's attached to it? It shares the same roof.
I don't. I think we're just talking about the portion that's owned by Mr. Matz, correct?
That's correct.
So,
It only applies to that property.
because only Mr. Matz has the authority to initiate the landmark designation, and he couldn't do it for someone else.
So if just hypothetically, if the neighbor that you spoke so highly of decides that they want to sell their building and the person that buys it wants to tear it down, they can tear down their half of the mansard roof and their half of that building and do what they want.
right.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's no regulatory authority over anyone else except for Mr. Matz.
Just his. Okay.
Just his building.
I want to ask you a question. I live in Surfside Village. I live a block and 2 houses south of Main Street on Oleander, okay? I wasn't here in Daytona Beach when they tried to do the Surfside Village as a historic overlay district. And I understand that as recently as maybe 5 or 6 months ago, once again, the city board, historic board, went to the commissioners and the mayor and asked them to vote again for that overlay in our residential neighborhood, and they voted against it. And I think this is a much bigger issue than just a one building on Main Street. I think it really affects, all of Surfside. I can tell you that all of Surfside residents that I've talked to, we want the historic overlay. But for some reason, the commissioners and the mayor, they don't vote for it. Can you give us any, is that a house, I think you mentioned that's a house-by-house decision also or something?
No.
The residential neighborhood behind this building.
Right. The district was just a request for the district as a whole, or as the recommendations were made, and I think some boundaries were suggested as to what they may be, and that information was all forwarded. I can't tell you what everyone was thinking that was there. There's obviously comments on the record, but you're correct in that the decision was not to go forward with that proposal.
Yeah, we in the neighborhood are working on that, and we really would like to see that happen because we really feel that it would really renaissance that blighted neighborhood, especially if there were architectural standards on the houses in there. But the city commissioners keep voting against it.
Well, one thing I do want to point out, and we do this every time that someone applies for windows, changes, any kind of renovation they're doing in their houses, and we're getting them, thankfully,
Yeah.
to invest. And I think we send them your way sometimes, Suzanne, just
Yes.
to give them some ideas. But I think that for the most part, the people that are coming in here, we see their permits, requests. They come up to redevelopment. We look for the design standards to make sure there's not any anomalies or anything that's not going to be in keeping with the character of that architecture, whether it's historic or not. But we are looking at, and we're very sensitive to the national standards, the design standards, and we will make comments and recommend something different. And if we disagree, we'll be back in front of this board if somebody wants to appeal our decisions.
Okay.
Other additional questions?
Yeah, Mr. What does this do to the E-zone? Does that set the standard for the rest of the buildings?
Absolutely not. It does not change that. I would tell you that you have different ideas of some architecture down there. Main Street, when you look at it, I think we've shown before a couple of pictures of the facades, and it shows a whole variety that somebody might come up with. But it really looks for creativity, not a monoculture of a certain type of building. It's having somebody comes in and wants to mimic, or let's say they want to tear down the building for some reason that's right next to it. They might attach something to that building that looks like it was before, if there was some reason to do that, or not. They may have something that's totally unique and different that we would agree fits what the E-zone's going to be. Here's the problem we have right now. We do not have an overlay district. We do not have anything other than what we've had all along to go by. Okay.
So we are setting up standards because anybody that comes and wants to build something completely different next to it.
They could do it now, and I would tell you right now they could do it in the future under the E-zone plan, depending on how restrictive it becomes. The idea was to be not very restrictive, just kind of guide people. And right now, if someone came in our door and said, we want to do that, we would open up that plan and say, hey, have you thought about this? And this happens all the time. They come to staff. We see something that's just one big square with one window stuck in the middle. We don't settle for something that's not going to fit, that doesn't look like it has some compatibility. We have to look at that.
So it's case by case. Anybody that wants to go, it's case by case.
Yeah, this is a completely owner initiative, and it's building that I think you've heard in the staff report, in my opinion. It meets the criteria for a landmark, and it's nothing but that. So
The reason I'm saying this is just, are we opening a closed door to other in the area?
well, I mean, it's anybody else that has a building that meets the criteria, I guess. And we've talked about a couple of buildings there, the old bank buildings. I guess Froggy's is one, and the owners could apply if they wanted to, but it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. It's going to be owner initiative.
Under the historical restriction, there's a certain percentage of changes you can do to the building?
Yeah. Typically, the assessment would be what's architecturally significant about the building. The main thing that I see.
From the roof down, if somebody, just throw it there, somebody buys this building and wants to change from the roof down, they can do anything.
Well, they're going to have to submit a plan.
Yeah, no,
I wouldn't make a blanket statement, but
Okay.
It's certainly, as I said, the question over here was restoration. It's rehabilitation. It's taking the building in its present condition, even with the changes that have been made. Some changes are not historic, but the owner is entitled to keep those. But it's a practical approach to treating historic buildings, and so you're going to have to make it handicap accessible. It's got to be safe. Update mechanical systems, that type. All those things are perfectly acceptable under this program. The main thing is on the exterior. what's significant, what catches my eye, as I said, is the roof detailing at this point. I think the storefronts, just the configuration, it's got a classic show windows in there. Things like that would be important to keep, but otherwise, if there are existing changes or there are things that make the building safer or have to be adapted for code, those are perfectly acceptable.
I think this is one thing that's really important to keep in mind in practice. A lot of times when people want to do certain things and change the way that might look, use this building as an example, and there's that big, long facade, and they're going to try to fix it up. Oftentimes they're going to ask, do you have any grant money? We're going to say, yes, we have an historic preservation grant. Now, let's go look at how that building used to look, because we're going to go down to the museum or wherever we can get the old pictures, and we're going to say, you know what? If we're going to be using this money, particularly if it's over the $15,000 amount and kicks it into going to the city commission, we will be looking very carefully at what was there, whether or not we restore it back. And as a practice, we're doing this downtown. We're having those discussions right now, been having them for years, about all those buildings, because they're already in a local district. So when you look at those buildings on Beach Street, a lot of times we're facing that issue if they want to do something, because they have to go to the to both the downtown board and to the historic board. That's life downtown, and so it's not a real scary process. It's just something you got to get used to, but it works for the most part.
I'd like to say something about that. Thank you for bringing that up. That bay window that's on the Oleander side, the architrave between the roof and the bay window, the architrave is completely gone. It's not the metal stamped. And I wanted them to replace that. For instance, when we're just recommending here tonight that this is going to go before boards that are going to be checking the designs and everything when they get this designation. Is that right?
Just the designation, not to recommend some change to the facade. This is not a certificate of appropriateness request. This is a request for rezoning it.
Yes, but
So-
once it gets the historic designation,
Yes.
that isn't the historic board in the city of Daytona Beach going to be checking the details on this building they just gave the historic designation to?
No, then if they're going to be making some changes to the window, let's say they have, one of the problems with those, why they're out in the first place where you don't see them, is why? Because the deterioration of those, over time, they've lost some of the structure in there. And so if somebody has to go back and do repair, that may be an issue that may be addressed and required by the Historic Preservation Board in the future. At least they can consider that when a permit comes before them to repair or restore the building. But at this time, through the rezoning process, no. That might be a consideration that, just overall in a building, if we looked at a building and said, it doesn't look historic, it's not, the architecture is all gone, that would be part of the report, and we might not be sitting here suggesting a rezoning. But in the details that you're talking about, it's really not, I don't think, of consequence in their consideration of whether it's historically or architecturally significant building because of its style.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
He's going to get money.
No, there's no money involved here from the city.
Not yet.
He's getting
Not
money.
yet.
Yet.
He's getting money
Your
from
issue-
somebody.
They were talking about hypotheticals, like what would happen once he got this designation.
He's
But
going to get money.
no, he has the opportunity to come back and
He becomes
apply.
eligible.
Okay.
He
He
becomes
has the
eligible.
possibility of
That's
getting money.
correct.
Is that now? Did I state it
Yeah.
correctly? Okay.
Right.
He has the possibility of getting money.
And he could also get, this is not what I do, but this is what Mr. Weaver does. Are you doing any incentives, tax
Yeah,
incentives?
we talked about that. We haven't actually committed to anything, but he wants to consider that to try and qualify for the federal tax credits. I think to answer your question, if in the future he contemplates some substantial changes, be it through a grant or something he wants to do to the building, then the issue that you're talking about,
That's Gilbert's issue
Might come
about
up.
changes.
Okay.
I'm talking about this one thing that's on this building that is really unattractive and really ruins, in my opinion, ruins the look of this building, and that's that missing metal architrave above that bay window, and it needs to be reproduced and put on there. So I don't understand if the city's going to give somebody possibly money because they have a historical designation, then to me the city should be allowed to set some standards
Oh, and
of
that's what
things
I'm-
to be fixed.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm
They-
saying if we're asked for a grant, to provide a grant, we would be looking at all of the things that were there before and recommending some of the ways to put that back together so it has the integrity of the building as it was before.
Okay.
Now, there's always compromise and recommendations and how much money they want to use, and I've had people walk away after, saying, well, for $5,000, I can go do this a different way. Or, you have a commercial grant. I will use that. There's no tie to that, yes and no. When we look at design standards. If it's a design standard problem, regardless of it's historic or not, we're going to bring that up.
So my point is this.
Yeah.
You're representing Mr. Matz, correct? So does Mr. Matz understand that this could be, once he gets the historic designation, that he's going to be possibly asked to change and spend money on some of the features on this building? Do you think he knows that?
yeah, I think he does know that. But again, it's only going to be if he gets a grant or he gets something that's requires a permit to do. That's where the authority would come.
Okay.
And right now, again, we're just asking for the designation.
Right.
I always like to look down the road, though. If this is just a recommendation board on this issue, I like to know what all the consequences are for both parties, the city and for the owner of the building. That's why I bring all this up.
I think he's got his eyes wide open on this.
Okay.
Are there additional questions of Mr. Weaver?
If not, thank you, and I would ask for your approval of this.
Thank you. Are there public comments? All right. No public comments. Is there so just to confirm with you, Reed, staff recommends that we recommend that the Historic Preservation Board, Planning Board, and City Commission designate the structure at 516 Main Street as a historic site.
That is correct.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Well, is there additional comments from the board?
Well, there aren't comments until there's a motion on the table.
I'll bring the motion.
All right. So to restate the motion, Mr. Mayer recommends that the Redevelopment Board recommend that Historic Preservation Board, Planning Board, and City Commission designate the structure at 516 Main Street as a historic site. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there comments or conversation?
The only comment I want to make is the front looks beautiful, but when you were talking about Surfside Village, I mean, and this has nothing to do with this. I mean, I'll be supportive of the designation, but we really need to encourage. I mean, the Surfside Village is looking at a bunch of crap at the back of the buildings. If you look at the bottom picture, I mean, it really is very unsightly. But anyways, I don't know how we go to fix up the appearance on the back of the buildings. I mean, obviously there's a priority in making sure that the front of the buildings look nice, but this is very unsightly. But anyways, okay. I'm done.
I want to elaborate on what he said. Is it possible when the gentleman goes for the grants and does what he wants to do and everything else, possible for the city to make sure that the back of it is done too instead of just the front? You see what I'm saying?
But do you see the picture?
So what I'm trying to say is,
do.
look, the front of the building is not a problem, but the people that live on Surfside,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be looking at the back of these buildings.
Isn't there a park out back there? There's like a little gazebo, a little park.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there is a
but-
little park.
Yeah.
Some of the buildings on the back are very attractive.
Yes,
This
they are.
particular
Yes, I
one is
agree.
not.
Yes,
Most of them are very attractive.
I'm sure the city can, if the gentleman's, the gentleman's applying for different,
Mr. Chair, may I speak?
You may, please.
My understanding of your ordinance is anything that's visible from public view, if it's
agree.
subject to review.
I understand, and I agree with you 100%.
So I
but-
think the rear of it would be something that, if there was concerns from either this board or the historic board, that they could be addressed. So there's nothing keeping them, keeping that.
I
It's going
agree
to be
that-
everything that's street visible. So I think this clearly meets that criteria.
No, I agree with you that it's, just street visible, but there's residents visible too. They
Yeah.
There's people that look,
Well, I mean, Old Leander, I guess, we're looking there, and it's clearly, that's part of the streetscape view of the building, so I would think you would, that would be
and
something.
I'll give you the perfect example. And,
He's agreeing with you, though.
Yeah, no, I know. That's exactly what I'm saying. And perfect example, it doesn't matter if it's which building, and you can look at, Teresa's buildings, front and back.
Yeah.
It's not only what people see in the front, but there's people in the back too. We got thousands of tourists on the Ocean Center. So, when they come and they don't look in the front of the building, they look at the back of the buildings.
If there's ever a request that comes to us for some financial incentives, that we will look at all sides of the building, the lot itself, or any screening of it, or putting up trees or anything to kind of break that up too, that's going to have to be on another property, whether it's right of way, which is very tight,
Yes, it is.
and then you have basically some parking lot back there, but it's a different owner, and Mr. Matz does not control that back section back there.
Jewelry stores.
It was just a suggestion.
FYI.
It was just.
But I appreciate that. No, and I think that we just want you to know that we would be looking at the entire building anytime somebody approaches us about
If
grants.
you have a building that on two streets, do you fix only one street, one side, and you leave the other side as is? No.
Yeah.
So anyway, just a suggestion.
I think the owner's going to get the message.
It was just a suggestion. You're welcome.
Are there additional questions before we call the vote? All right. All in favor of recommending that the Historic Preservation Board, Planning Board, and City Commission designate the structure at 516 Main Street as a historic site, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, respond by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is
Thank
the
you, sir.
redevelopment project update.
Okay, sure. Let's wait till that comes up for you. Nope. Here, I'm going to bring you to it. There you go. Okay. Because I didn't keep my notes, so I have to look up here. Thanks. Bandshell restoration is something that we're going forward with a grant now that's actually been submitted to Tallahassee. So we're seeking significant funding for the bandshell, and that also includes now some work that we're doing with the echo funds on the roof. It includes later on we'll see hopefully some of the community efforts to raise funds for the improvement to the plaza area, be known as Ritchie Plaza, named after our former mayor, and so that we'll have really three components with this bandshell right now, and maybe a fourth as we look at everything from lighting to sound equipment. There's other efforts that are continuing to move forward. And then lastly, just the operations that have been successful in the past. We had a discussion today with the Friends of the Bandshell, and looking at making sure we have an agreement we can all live with and function well going forward. Because the tribute bands were a great success, so successful, in fact, that we require a much more improved crowd control and other ways to handle the number of people that are coming to the area. So it's all a good problem to have, and so we're looking forward to more and better. A challenge to the Friends of the Band Shell.
Am I allowed to throw in that the city also made $87,000 in gross sales off the 16 events in alcohol sales?
Do you know the net?
What?
The net? There is a cost.
The net was 40 something.
Okay. Moving forward on some of the other things, the workshop. These are two important dates for you. The workshop on the homeless is coming up this Wednesday at 4:30. If you have any feelings whatsoever about the issue, and I got to think you do, and anybody that's been a business person, that as much as we want to help those who have not, we need to do it in a different way or we'll get the same results, and it's holding us back as a business community. What time?
What time is the meeting?
That one is at 4:30. Yes. So 4:30 Wednesday afternoon, please. Dr. Marbut will be here. It'll be an opportunity for some open discussion with the commission. Usually in a workshop, I'm not sure that they'll take the public discussion. I think you just can come and listen, but it's an important one, or at least listen in online. But having some presence here, people recognize that there's some redevelopment board members out there. It would be good for them to see some faces. Okay.
I watched that meeting on TV with that guy when he presented. I was pretty impressed with what he said. I thought he spoke to a lot of the points that Suzanne made.
He had 4 Minutes of Fame on NPR this weekend because of the 90-year-old man in Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
He didn't talk to that, but he did get a lot of those points across that he was making with us. And so we're very determined to keep going forward with who we think is the expert to take us where we need to be. The other thing is coming up is the Land Development Code. That is going to be going to a second reading that will come up on the first meeting in December. I think it's the 3rd. I have that up there.
Yeah.
It's they're still advertising for the second reading, but they're going to have a workshop at 4:30 in advance of that meeting.
It's my understanding the second reading hasn't been set. They're going to do the workshop and then try to determine a date after that workshop.
So there's some confusion there, but my understanding is that at least the workshop is on that date. If they're moving that meeting or resetting that, I've not heard any dates.
Unless something changed in this morning.
So put that second part about commission's final action as very tentative. The workshop itself, though, is definitely scheduled for that time at 4 o'clock, not 4:30, but 4 o'clock on that first Wednesday in December. Okay? And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Are there public comments? All right, we'll move on to board comments. Start with Gilbert.
Sure. First things, I'd like to thank Mr. Berger for the issue that we had with the parking, on the whole board of members about the tickets and everything else. That issue was solved so fast because everything was, the city came out and saw and they came out at 8 o'clock in the morning, standing in my shop looking at the people. Well, the people were supposed to be there at 9 o'clock. They didn't show up till 11:30. But just to elaborate about it is that the city took care of it. The people are not complaining about getting tickets anymore. They got rid of that person that was issuing that many tickets. So I want to thank Mr. Berger for taking care of it right away, for making. The other thing I want to say is that about it's a very, very sensitive subject when it comes to homeless. It is as tough as religion and politics. but we have to do something about it. I know everybody, I don't know if everybody sees it. I see it on a daily basis. I deal with it on a daily basis. The perfect example, Starbucks opened not long ago. They already have almost 13 trespassed, almost. So they haven't been open for a long time. I had to work with Captain Newcomb, with the police department, to work with Starbucks, to work with certain people around, but we do have, and it's a very, very delicate subject because there's people feeding them. Those are churches, so it's hard to deal with those. And I know Mr. Berger knows what I'm talking about, but we have to do something about it. Not only as residents, but as business people too. Because, when you have customers coming in or walking by, and they get stopped, every 5 minutes, and people are asking for money. And today, I was getting ready to go to court at 1 o'clock, and I almost saw somebody punching a homeless because he didn't want to leave. The gentleman was taking pictures of the beach with his wife and his kids, and the guy came out and started asking and asking. And the guy turned around and says, "No, leave." And it's getting a little bit where we do need to do something about it. I know everybody here is in business. I know everybody, residents, I know, but it's affecting not only the business people, not only the tourists, but it's affecting us all in general. So I'm trying to try to be there for this meeting. It is very important, and we cannot point the finger anymore. Well, it's him, it's her, it's a no. We all got to work together on this. Nobody's against people that are down on their luck. We're not saying they're bad people, but we got to do something to save our hardcore area where that's how we feed the families. Everybody here somehow, some way has something to do with the beachside feeding the families. And that's what we got to do. So I know Mr. Berger is insisting on everybody being there and all the help he can get. And I push it too if it's possible. All right? Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I agree with what he said. That's all.
Like I said, I'm sure everybody deals with it on a daily.
I'm good.
I don't understand why the police are not on those streets every single day from ISB to Main Street. Really, Oak Ridge is bad in there, but from ISB to Main Street and those 6 streets going east and west, there should be police on those streets every single day. I have to call the captain, tell him where the homeless people are now sleeping, what houses they're sleeping in when the people are gone. He goes and he has to go through a huge thing of getting a trespass order against that particular address. And then they're back. It's just, if the police would just come for a 3-month period and go on every street, have a policeman on every single one of those streets, they would be rid of those homeless people in that residential neighborhood within a few months.
If you don't mind, I can answer that question because I've been working a lot with the police department on certain subject. It's not the police department. It is not. It starts with state attorney, judges, and down. They stop him in the morning, they let them out in the afternoon. So it's not the police department. I can guarantee you that. The trespass program, I can tap myself on the shoulder. I brought that from the West Coast, from Tampa, almost 13 years ago, where the owner of the property doesn't have to be there to sign to get somebody arrested. Okay? So that was working, that's the trespass.
Is that in Tampa or is that here?
No, we brought the program from Tampa to Daytona, and it works very well over here.
Every single person that's sleeping in yards and houses that I have to call the police and the police have to trespass them.
I agree with you, but what I'm talking about is a trespass. The trespass program works very good. But as far as the homeless people is concerned, I can tell you that it's not the police department because they arrest them, they bring him to jail. The next day they're out. I'll tell you something, and I know I shared my thoughts with Mr. Berger. The West Coast, St. Petersburg, Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, they have a program where every morning at 5:30 in the morning, you have a sheriff department, sheriff department with buses. They drive up and down the hardcore where the tourists hang out. They pick up all the homeless. They take them on 95. They tell them south, north. You come back here. Second time, you get 6 months automatic jail. They don't come back. We cannot do that here. We sat down with the state attorney, and the answer was, no, you can't do that. You're touching their freedom. You're touching their amendment. You're touching their whatever. So it's not the police department. I know, because believe me, if there was a problem on the homeless, and the prostitution is the same thing. There's a program in Tampa where if the same girl is arrested twice in the same area on the beach side, automatically 6 months in jail, and she does not allowed on the beach side anymore.
Here?
In Tampa. We brought that program over here, but it's not up to the city commission. It is not up. It's up to the judges and the state attorneys.
Well, but who enforces it?
But
Who goes out and arrests them?
I understand that, but
It's the police.
Yes, but the police goes. Listen, I see them because I have. They all day long they stop them. But the problem you have is they cuff them, they read their rights, they bring them up next door to 7-Eleven, next door to me. On it, there's the zero tolerance. They get them, they take them. The next day they're back.
Okay, so if there's no solution then,
No, there is a solution.
what is it?
We have to start from the state attorney and the judges and everybody else, and then it goes down to the police department.
Oh.
The police department is only a tool. It's only a tool. One day I'll show you the program that they have on the homeless. Cocoa Beach just passed a city ordinance, I think, about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, that the homeless are not allowed on the beach side where the tourists are.
But that's part of the purpose of this meeting coming up.
I understand.
Right. Yeah.
But that doesn't start with the state's attorney. That started with the city government body.
But because they have the backup of the state attorney and the judges. What's the use of passing a city ordinance if let's say I'm an officer and I take him inside? What's the use of?
Okay, so
letting him
you're
in? He's
saying,
out the
Gilbert,
next day.
so what you're saying is we who are concerned and live and do business on the beach side should go as a committee of people to the state's attorney's office and petition to the state's attorney's office to solve
No,
this problem.
I was told that the mayor, city manager, and commissioners, they need to step up. They need to step up and say, look, we have a certain area designated for tourists. There's an area that we'd like to protect and come up with new laws. Meaning if somebody's caught on that area for a couple of times, the first time they let him go, second time, if the person gets caught, automatically, there is no ifs or buts about it, it's 6 months in jail. They're banned from that area.
So then who we need to petition and talk to are our city commissioners and mayor.
Well, you can do that on November 12th at 4:30.
I was told, yes, that's why this meeting is very important. That's why this meeting is very important. Believe me, I was one of the person that fed a lot of the homeless, but I was hammered by a lot of people because, you know, when a homeless comes up and asks you, do you have any change? You tell me you have change for 20, and he says yes, then he doesn't need that thing. He doesn't need that change. So it's not, the problem is not the business people, it's not the police department. It's people that open a door, you put them in, and the next day they're out. It's something that is very, very delicate, and who feeds them? It's the church. The church feeds them. So, you know, it's,
So I think-
believe me, I'll show you, I think I still have the programs because I turned it over to the police department. I think, I'll call tomorrow or I'll see if they still have those that we got turned down. The other programs got turned down. You'll be amazed. And I said to when we say state attorney and everybody else, I said, listen, other places are doing it. How come we can't do it? The answer was, well, what was that? Freedom of, you're allowed to be anywhere you want as long as you're not on private property, on the city property.
Well, there's civil rights. What I would
Federal.
suggest is this: if you haven't looked at Dr. You might not make it here Wednesday. If you can't get online, then whatever, it'll be streaming. But you can also go to his website where he has a number of examples, and just you can sit back and just watch some video of some of the things that he goes over, or you can read some of the material that he provides on his website. So just look up Dr. Marbut, M-A-R-B-U-T, because again, we've contracted with him. We believe he has a lot of the right answers on how to do it right here in Daytona Beach, and he has a report, and it's available to you. And you you really want to take a look at that, because it's not about criminalization. It's not about, this is where the faith community and the city all come together. The churches, as a whole, look at it and say, we're with you. If we can get there, we're with you on trying to do this a different way, feed people in a certain place, or can bring all the services together. So that's what we want to do on Wednesday. Okay?
Wasn't there something like by 95 to build something by 95 and send them there?
Well, that's where we'll hear more about in the discussion. Yeah.
Teresa? Dina? I don't either. Meeting is adjourned.